My name is Torres. I'll be delivering this session about Power BI data flows and... Oh, what are you doing here? Well, I'm trying to deliver the session, and you, what are you doing here? Well, I'm trying to deliver the session. Let's do this. Since we are two, one of us will deliver the session and the other will be answering the questions on the chat during the session. So we can do both things at the same time, right? Okay. So I'll be answering the questions on the chat. Okay, so let's go to the chat. So let's start. On this session, I'll talk about self-service ETL, the Power BI data flows. Let's see a bit more about me. My name is Torres. I'm a data platform MVP. I have some Microsoft certifications, and I'm a Brazilian living in Malta, and I'm the leader of the Malta Data Platform User Group. This user group website has a lot of information, technical content. You would like to visit it. And on the right side, you see my contacts. Feel free to keep in touch, ask questions, and so on. So what we will see today? The Power BI ETL problem? Yes, because there is a problem. There is a problem. That's why we solve this problem using data flows. How data flow works, and demonstrations, a lot of demonstrations. The Power BI ETL problem, what I'm talking about. Power BI has an ETL system called Power Query. You use Power Query inside Power BI. It uses M language, and it works very well. What's the problem? We build all these inside PBIX files. The Power BI file is a PBIX file, and we will build everything inside this file. It means the visualization, the reports, the model of the data used by the reports, and the ETL system using Power Query and the M language. So everything, all the pieces are in the same file. This is good if you are working alone, but how can we evolve this for an enterprise environment? How can an enterprise environment keep this kind of work and still have teamwork developing over Power BI? This is very difficult. Mind the data dimension on this scenario is duplicated. We would need to duplicate the data dimension in many PBIX files, many different PBIX files, and that's not good. What we are doing with the ETL process, with the data flows, is to remove the ETL, the Power Query part, the M language script, from the PBIX. We'll build the data flows inside the portal. And in this way, we'll be able to share the data flows among many different solutions, many different files. So we'll be able to reuse a data flow. Like the data dimension, for example, the data flow to build the data dimension, it needs to be reusable by many different models or different reports. So building the data flow in the portal, we'll be able to do that. And how the data flows works? It's only available in App Workspace. When you log in the portal, you see immediately the My Workspace. It's not available on My Workspace. It's only available on App Workspace. The data source needs to be registered in the gateway. If we are using an on-premise data source, we need to register the data source in the gateway. I will make a demonstration about this. Each data flow can have many entities. This means that for each data flow, we can bring many tables to Power BI, many entities to Power BI. One data flow doesn't mean one single table. One data flow can mean many tables. Each data flow can have many data sources. This means that we can mix data sources in the data flow to merge the data together if we would like so. We can use many data sources in the same data flow. And one data flow can use another data flow as a source. This starts to become great as an enterprise level tool because I can really reuse piece of work. So if some other developer in another part of the company made an ETL that is close to what I need, I can reuse that ETL and complete the work, add the additional information that I need to the ETL system. So one data flow can use another data flow as a source of data. Let's see a demonstration of all these that I just talked about. Let's start the demonstration. I'm already on the PowerBI website, but first let's understand my environment. I'm working on my local laptop. On this laptop, I have a virtual machine called WorkVM. On this virtual machine, I have a SQL server. I have here a SQL server with many AdventureWorks databases. So I have here the AdventureWorks, AdventureWorks DW, and so on. I will access this content from the PowerBI website. In order to access an on-premise data source from the web, I need to use the gateway. On-premise data gateway. And here is the gateway already configured, installed as a service on my local machine. And the interesting part is that the gateway is on the laptop. PowerBI Online will come to this gateway to get the data, and this gateway will go to my virtual machine, which is another machine in my network, to get the data. So the gateway is an entry point for my local network, my on-premise network. And how do I configure this gateway? I can configure this gateway on-premise using the on-premise application. I need to configure the gateway online on the portal. Here, Manage Gateways, Settings, Manage Gateways. Then I make the gateway configuration here. It's already configured, but let's see how it works. A portal administrator can set up the gateway and delegate the administration of the gateway to another user. This is very interesting because this becomes a hierarchical administration system. So the portal administrator can delegate a gateway administration to another user. Then, the gateway administrator can create connections on the gateway, connections to different data sources through that gateway. The connection stores the authentication method for the on-premise data source. And we will see how important this is later. And the gateway administrator can set up who will have access to each connection on the gateway. Who can access each connection? And this will define what data from the on-premise environment each Power BI developer, each business analyst can access. So we have a hierarchical system. We have the portal administrator delegating to the gateway administrator, which gives access to the developers, give access to the connection to the developers. Okay. I have here my workspace. Although it shows data flows here, I can't create a data flow. If I open the new option, I will not see a data flow option here. There is no data flow option at this point. So I need to create a workspace, a new workspace. Let's create a workspace. Data com array and save. Now I'm on my new workspace. And I'll create my first data flow. Data flow. There are 4 options to create data flows. I use the first one. It's the most obvious one. I want to create a data flow, an ETL, that will bring me new entities to my environment. That's it. I just want to create a data flow. So add new entities using the first option. And I will choose the data source that I use. I use SQL Server. Mind what will happen while I type the name of the server, workvm, and the name of the database, Adventure Works DW 2016. What happened? While I was typing, Power BI was trying to identify if there is a connection on the gateway which matches the server and database name, and if I have access to this connection. Since there is a connection and I have access to it, it brought to me all the authentication configuration. So imagine me as a report developer, I don't need to know the connection credentials to the on-premise data source. I don't need to know that. I only have access through the gateway configuration, because the gateway administrator gave me access through the gateway configuration. But I don't know exactly what authentication is being used. I don't know the details of the authentication. Now, Power BI already made a query on my local server and is showing the tables on my server. Let's choose 2 tables. I will choose customer and products. With this example, I'm showing to you that a workflow can have multiple tables, multiple entities. There is no problem with that. Data flow doesn't mean exactly one single table. It means it can mean multiple tables, no problem. So transform data. And I'm seeing the Power Query environment. That's Power Query. I have the Power Query environment on the Power BI portal. That's it. Let's make some transformations here. On the customers, let's remove some columns, for example. I'll remove all the language-specific columns. I don't want them. Everything related to Spanish and French, I will remove, but not the key. The key stays. So remove columns. And mind, it is working exactly as Power Query. When I made the transformation, in this case remove columns, it registered my transformation and it's building the M code behind the scene. Let's change the name of the entity, customer, and the other one will be product. That is it. Now save and close. Saving. Let's give a name for this data flow. Let's call customer flow. Save. Mind that I'm creating a data flow called customer flow, and this data flow contains 2 entities, customer and product. Now I will refresh this data flow. This means that it will come to my local server and get the data. Okay. So we just created our first data flow and we saw that we can create it online. We have a Power Query interface online to make the creation. But is it good? Is it comfortable? Will you be able to create any data flow that you need, any ETL that you need on that interface? Well, it may take a while to you get the user to the online interface. And besides that, you may have many ETLs inside your PBIX files that you want to transform in data flows as well. How to do that? Let's take a look. I have one example here with some tables inside the PBIX. So let's make an edit query. I will edit this query. View, advanced editor, and I will copy the M code of this query. Here on the portal, I'll create a new data flow. Again, define new entities. But this time, I'll select the option to create a blank query. I'll paste my M query here. So I'm bringing the M code that I have on the on-premise environment to the cloud in the format as a data flow. I will select the gateway and I will fix the name of the server and database. It's sensible to the case of the letters. Next. It's preparing the query and it's asking me to configure the connection. When I click configure the connection, it already brings to me the authentication. And I don't need to know the authentication. I am the report developer. I don't need to know this authentication. But from the point that the server name and the database name match with a connection on the gateway that I have access, it brings me the authentication method. And I can connect to the server. Let's call this entity geography. I'm bringing geography data on this entity. And save and close. Validating the query, preparing to save, and now let's give a name to the data flow. Geography flow. The data flow is geography flow, and the entity inside this data flow is geography. Save. Let's ask the refresh. Refresh now. It's executing the refresh. And now we already have two data flows. We have the customer flow and the geography flow. And the customer flow includes the entity customer, which is linked to geography because the customer lives somewhere. And the geography flow has the information about where the customer lives, information about geography in general. So I would like to link these entities, link customers with geography and create one single entity. So let's create a new data flow. This time I will not use the first option. This time my data source is another data flow. Two other data flows in this case. So I use the second option. Link entities from other data flows. add linked entities. I'm already signed in here. I'll click next. Mind the folders that I'm seeing here on the left side. These are the Power BI workspace. Each one of these is a different Power BI workspace. What this means? This means that I can read data, I can link data and share data across workspace in Power BI according to the permissions given to access the data. And why is this important? Because each of these workspaces could represent a branch of the company, for example, a different branch in a different place under different management. And the business analyst can share data across the workspace. But in this example, I'm getting data from a single workspace. I'll get geography and customer and ask to transform data. That's it. So I have here geography and customer. Mind the different symbol used to represent them is a different symbol because these two are now linked entities. They are not from here. They are linked from a different data flow. They are coming from a different data flow, not from this data flow. So they are linked entities. The advice here already tell me that I can't update linked entities. I can't transform linked entities. I can't update them. But if I need a transformation, I need to create new entities. So here, I will choose the merge option to merge customers with geography, and will select the option merge queries as new. This means I'll create a new entity. So I'm merging customer and geography, and the key to merge both is geography key on customers and geography key on geography. Okay. It creates a new entity, gives the name of match. Let's give a beautiful name to it. Let's call customer Jill. And in the end of this entity, the last column of this entity is the geography table. So here that I see the geography table, I can expand this and select the fields that I would like to bring to the customer Jill entity, which will be the city, the province name, state province name, and English country region name, and postal code. Okay. That's it. That's it. I have my new entity with the information from customers and information from geography. So I save and close. It's validating the queries. And I'll give a name for this new data flow. I'll call this customer Jill flow. Save. It offers to refresh it for me, but it gives me an advice. I can't refresh it unless I have a premium account. because I'm using linked entities. Linked entities, an entity linked from different data flows are a premium feature, can only be used in a premium account. How to solve that? There is a solution. There is a solution, and it's not to buy premium account. It's giving an alert here, but before to solve this problem, let me show you that we can click here on the data flow and select the option View Lineage. What is this and why is this important? View Lineage. The View Lineage shows to us the source of our data. We are seeing here the customer geo flow, the data brought by the customer geo flow comes from the customer flow and geography flow, which each other comes from a SQL server using the SQL set gateway. So I can see the entire lineage of the data. And why is this important? This is very important to know if the data is trustworthy. If I'm working in a huge enterprise with many different branches across countries and so on, I need to know where the data is coming from. Maybe the data is coming from Excel spreadsheet built by someone in some place that is not trustworthy at all, and this will generate false information. So I need to know where the data comes from, and the lineage is great for that. This lineage feature is great for that. But now let's solve our problem with this data flow. We can't refresh the data flow, so let's edit the data flow and edit the queries on the data flow. And here comes the secret. The secret to make this work is that the linked entities are a feature for premium accounts. But I can use linked entities as long as I don't load them on the data flow. Mind the enable load option. If I disable this option, I can use the linked entity to build a new entity, and that's what I'm doing. I'm using customer and geography to build customer geo. So I'm using the linked entity to build a new entity, and I do not need to load them here. I don't need to have the other two entities here. So I click Save and Close. No alert, and I can refresh this data flow, and it's executing the refresh. That's it. That's the secret. That's the secret that allows us to use to make one data flow using another data flow even without the premium account. However, mind that a few weeks ago it was announced during Ignite that the premium account per user will be launched soon, will be available soon. And this will change a lot the way we work with Power BI. The premium account per user will be available very soon. A problem that still exists with this feature is that when I come to view lineage now, I don't see anything. It's customer geo flow. Where is my data coming from? It doesn't tell me. The lineage feature is not able to identify entities not loaded by the data flow. It can't identify entities not loaded by the data flow. And that is a problem because we basically lose the lineage feature. There is a request for this to be fixed on Power BI website. The link to the request is here at my side. You can see the link here at my side. And the point is we need to vote for this request so the Power BI team will know how important this feature is for us. So go to this address at my site and vote for this feature. Vote for it. So getting back to the data flow, let's go to the settings and let me highlight another very important feature for enterprise environments. It's the endorsement feature. What this means? Imagine that we are working in a big enterprise environment. I may need to find data sources already built by other people and made available by other people on my enterprise, on my company. How do I find them? And more than find them, how do I know if that data source is trustworthy or not? The person who builds a data source can leave the data source as default. This means the data source is not intended to be shared, or can promote the data source. If the data source is being promoted, this means that data source is intended to be shared with other people, so it's a bit more trustworthy data source. The developer is ensuring that that data source can be reused. But is the developer ensuring that? How can we be sure? The portal administrator can define a set of people, a group of people in the company that will be able to certify data sources. So our data source can pass by a process. I can give permission to these people to access this data source. And these people can check the data source if the data source is correct, and then certify the data source, define the data source as certified. So we have these options to expose the data source on the enterprise environment. We can promote the data, so we are telling it, if we promote, we are telling, use it, it's okay to be used. Or you can certify the data source. If we certify the data source, we are telling it's more than okay to be used. It was checked by many people in the company and it is okay, it's correct. So these are the endorsement options that help us to find the data source among the enterprise. So I have these 3 data flows that I created. Let's go to Power BI Desktop. I have here an empty Power BI Desktop environment, and I will use Get Data and choose the option Power BI Data Flows. I can get data from a data flow. So I use Get Data from Data Flow, and it's connecting to the Power BI website and bringing to me the list of available data flows. Data com LA, Customer Deal Flow, and Customer Deal. So I can get this entity defined on the data flow that I created on the portal. So this solves the Power BI problem, the ETL problem of sharing what the ETLs that we built. We can save the ETLs in the cloud, on the portal, and share these ETLs with different developers who will be able to capture the data from the ETL that we already built and continue producing the reports from this. I have the entity here, and I'm not limited to this entity. I can get more data for this entity. To merge with this entity, again, can get more data and use additional data on my model. No problem with that. This is the power of the data flows. Let's review and highlight some important points about our session. Power BI Data Flows is a new capability for self-service data preparation in Power BI. That's true, but it's not a replacement for data sets. It's interesting to highlight the difference between data sets and data flows. The data flows are the ETL part of the problem. Is the transformation, the load and the transformation of the data, while the data set is the modeling part of the problem. We get the entity brought by the ETL and we model this entity, defining relationships, defining meshes in some cases, and so on. So we still have data sets. So now we have data sets and data flows, and both can be shared on the portal. We can have shared data flows and shared data sets in the portal. It gives us a familiar Power Query experience, but is not a replacement for a data warehouse. No way. Power BI needs to be reading data from a data warehouse. An enterprise data warehouse is still the company source of truth, but the data warehouse sometimes doesn't have everything. That's the point of the self-service. The data warehouse doesn't have everything, and you can't rely on the enterprise IT team to keep updating the data warehouse, keep including more information in the data warehouse. So when you need something that is not on the data warehouse, you use the self-service capabilities in Power BI to get additional data. You read from the data warehouse and get additional data and reach your objective. Built on the foundation of Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, yes, the storage of the data in Power BI is made on Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. This means that there are some features that allow Power BI to share data across other tools, such as Synapse, Data Factory, and other tools involved on the data architecture. This is beyond this session. This is another very interesting subject, but it's a bit beyond this session. And is not a replacement for Azure Data Factory or SSIS. We're talking about self-service BI. The Power BI works from the data warehouse. You will still need Azure Data Factory or SSIS to build the data warehouse. You have an enterprise ETL and you have the self-service ETL. You need to have both. All these features, all the data flow features are not replacing the enterprise ETL. They are improving the self-service ETL for an enterprise level, but not replacing the enterprise ETL. It's a tool for business users to reuse data objects like data flows without requiring IT involvement. That's the point. We don't need to rely on the enterprise IT teams. And there is no additional cost or fee unless you need to use some premium feature. These are some very interesting links. You would like to visit these links, reference about data flows. And here are my contacts once again. Feel free to get in touch and ask any question you would like. Thank you very much for attending this session.